Guys, I'm so excited to invite Atiya Khan to our chat today. Atiya, as some of you may know, especially in South Asia, she is an actor, an ex-model. She has walked the Sufism path, has made a documentary on Sufism. She had several television shows in Pakistan as well, and has been a curious explorer of the faith, the role of women, the advancement, the progress of women. And so I just wanted to sit down with her and chat about certain things that have been occupying my mind and things that she and I would find interesting to talk about. How are you, Atiya?
Very well. Thank you, Tanya. So good to see you.
I'm so glad we could do this now. It's late at night for you and it's still early in the day for me, but and thank you so much for taking the time. So one of the things that I wanted to chat about was how we tend to believe that femininity is something, or the feminine is something that is strictly, related to women, which is not really the case. The feminine is a quality, it's a characteristic that exists both in men and in women. And masculinity, by the same token, is a characteristic that exists both in men and women. One of the things I wanted to talk about is what has your experience been, especially these days when you look around?
Like you said, the feminine energy is not just based in a gender. We all have the masculine and the feminine, and everything in the universe has that yin yang balance of the masculine and the feminine, including in our culture, God himself has the masculine and the feminine sort of attributes.
When we think of feminine energy, when we think of what are the qualities of the feminine, yes, words like nurturing, words like tender, softness, caring do come to mind. But at the same time, mothers and women bear children. They bring life into this world. That's a certain force that they embody and that they bring out into this world. There's also a certain ferocity to the feminine, which is, the ferocity, the energy, the fire that is needed to construct, to create things. And so that to me sounds like more the qualities of the divine feminine. We hear toxic masculinity a lot, but we don't hear toxic femininity a lot. And could you shed some light on how you would describe it, the toxic feminine?
I just don't buy into this aspect of the gender war, that it's men against women. I think a lot of in a lot of cases it has been women that have actually been the enemies of women, that have not, that have been sort of competing with other women or jealous of other women or pulling other women down, and in my own experience, I've had the most nurturing, my father figures, my teacher. They've all been men, but they've been very, very nurturing. So I think that's a very political kind of a construct. And even as far as patriarchy is concerned, it's not just women that have suffered in patriarchy. It's a lot of men as well. It's the vulnerable. So the concept of patriarchy is power based, and the abuse of power, as opposed to like a gender war that we've made it out to be, because so many women have supported patriarchy as well. And so I think this concept of the toxic feminine, there's so many aspects to it. It's sort of embodying the principles of patriarchy and kind of using them to their advantage. It's about manipulation, it's about control, it's about, again, abuse of power. And on the other side of it, it can also be about victimhood and, martyrdom, and trying to sort of elicit sympathy through those means, which is all sort of kind of working in very low vibration energies.
And by the same token, toxic masculinity is similar because it is about control, it's about force, it's about power, it's about abuse of power. And the one thing that strikes me when you talk about toxic femininity and toxic masculinity as we understand it is that these qualities or these characteristics are all based in fear. Wherever this attribute emerges, when a woman is too controlling, or a man is too controlling or manipulative, or what have you, it always comes from a place of lack and a place of fear, because the contrast to that, when we talk about the divine feminine, when we talk about the sacred masculine, that comes from a place rooted in love and rooted in the power that love gives, which allows another to just feel empowered. By virtue of feeling that kind of power and peace inside you, you give that power to another person. And that's the paradigm we're talking about, right? When we talk about divine masculine and divine feminine.
Yes, and I think that a lot of it stems from your childhood, right? I mean, were you nurtured? Did you feel loved? Did you feel accepted? So that's how those cycles get perpetuated, right? I mean, if you are damaged at a young age and you have not had access to that kind of unconditional love and nurturing, it becomes very difficult to give what you don't have.
Absolutely. And I suppose all of life becomes that struggle to unlearn those things so that we can move. We can still, we're not prisoners of the past, but it requires a great amount of work and dedication to break free of those chains, for sure. I also want to
I think that's why so
understand.
many people turn towards spirituality and the divine, because there is that nurturing that is accessible, whether you had it in your biological parent or not. But there is the divine mother and the divine father and God and those realms that can heal you, that can feed you.
Absolutely. I mean, I know from my personal experience, turning to Sufism and studying Sufism and signing myself off as a lifetime student of the path was because I was really drawn to its feminine and nurturing and tender essence. It's so healing. It's like a balm for the senses and for the heart. And I felt like there was such a need for that in my life.
Yes. Absolutely. So we've been given the tools. I mean, those avenues are out there for anybody who's ready to receive.
Yeah, that's a very critical point, actually, because these things are not out so far outside of ourselves. We can also access whatever it is that we desire. Everything is available. There's really no excuse, right? One can seek the knowledge and the guidance and the books and the information that one needs in order to heal. It's all out there.
Absolutely, but we must also understand that there has been a concerted effort to kind of disempower us and to disconnect us from these sources of strength within ourselves. And it makes sense, because if you want to control people, if you want to dominate people, if you want to take all the resources for yourself and disempower people, then the best way to do it is by disconnecting them with their divine source. There's a lot of resistance when you are trying to get onto the path and empower yourself. There will be forces that will try and come in the way of your enlightenment.
In fact, I mean, I would go so far as to say that to me, so much of the organized religion feels like the obstacle in the path as well.
100%. I mean, organized religions kind of hijacked the message, right? And if you go back in history, all the prophets and saints actually waged a war against the organized religions of their time. It's always been that way, that the message gets hijacked by the power hungry who turn it into an institution for gain. But I think every religion has a spiritual aspect to it, and every religion has the sacred texts and the traditional knowledge and the traditional wisdoms that they can't tamper with. You know, so we can definitely take from those traditions without becoming a slave to the institution.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And also with that, there is, because of the patriarchy, because of the organized religion, there has been such a fear of the feminine over the ages. And let's explore a little bit this fear of the feminine, which has created these constructs, these ideas, this narrative that has made women enemies of each other, and also it has disempowered women.
Well, going back to matriarchy, I think that patriarchy was definitely a reaction to matriarchy, because I think in the matriarchal system, men were disposable. Men were not honored, men were not given the love and that they deserved, right? Which created within them this deep-seated fear of the feminine, and therefore the reaction. However, that's a separate construct to the actual religion, because if you go into the genuine traditions of the religions, women played a very, very important and equal role. Women had a very, very important role in early Christianity, but slowly they were sidelined. Similarly, in Islam, I mean, the role of Bibi Khatija or Bibi Fatma or even someone like Bibi Aisha is instrumental in early Islam. You cannot deny the very, very important role that they played in balancing the religion, in contributing to the religion. And for me, I kind of also believe in this concept of the twin soul, sort of a concept that the Messiah comes in the masculine and the feminine, and together they sort of deliver the message. So, Rasulullah needed Bibi Khatija as his equal partner to support him in being able to deliver the message and to fulfill his destiny. Similarly, Jesus needed Mary Magdalene to support him and to give him that backing so that he could sort of fulfill his destiny. Hazrat Ali, we speak so much about Hazrat Ali, but his power came from Bibi Fatima. So sure, I mean, today you look at the clergy and there are all these bearded men and there are no women and whatever, but that is something which is a false construct. It has nothing to do with the authentic, original message and the lives of the prophets.
In fact, not only just Christianity or Islam, but even in Hinduism, there's not just Shiva, there's Shakti, always hand in hand with Shiva. And that was the understanding that when the masculine and the feminine come together, the world is complete. Yin and yang, light and dark, they all have to come together to create the perfect and the complete experience. And it's a shame that we have lived so much time we've been living in a very lopsided fashion, really. We've just been focused on one aspect, which has been, that's been the teaching, that's been the narrative, and that's of the masculine, which I think too much of that maybe has led to the toxic masculinity as well. It all goes hand in hand.
100%. I mean, and that was required to sort of have this kind of culture of consumerism, of greed, of the corporate culture of raping the planet and the resources and hoarding and all of that. Because if that balance was there, that kind of action would not be allowed.
Men are imbibing more and more of that feminine aspect, or feel a little more comfortable, at least. At least here in the West now, men are voicing their emotions, which it's not happening all over, but you certainly notice it. From time to time, people are willing to talk about their feelings, which is something that men were not really trained and programmed to do all along, not raised to be that way. But by the same token, I feel that women also need to probably we also need to step into what is the authentic femininity for us, because we've also been exiled from it. We've also been on the outside of it. We've also downloaded a version of femininity that was existing all around us. And perhaps, each one of us takes the time to look within and say, well, where can I be a little bit more softer? Where can I make a little bit more space? Where do I need to assert myself without stirring a war? Because there are ways to assert oneself and get one's point across, without shattering anything also.
True, and finding ways of nurturing as a collective, the feminine essence. Because traditionally, women had these rituals where they would come together and they would pray and they would dance and they would, sort of light the candles and cook the meals and create that sort of, healing kind of environment. And we've lost that. I mean, even when women gather, we're not focusing on healing, and we're not focusing on sort of nurturing each other and our environments. So 100%, we need to kind of rethink so many things.
Absolutely agree. There is a lot of confusion around this because I think we're struggling for clarity. And because we are in that time where women have to find their own inner source, inner wellspring of femininity that is not tainted by what's in the zeitgeist about a woman in a man's world has to behave like a man. And so we're in such a process of finding ourselves, which is why I think talking about these things is important. And being Pakistani, whether being an expat or being a national, having the conversation, bringing this to the table is so important. And this is something I'd love to unpack with you in subsequent conversations as well. I feel like we did an interesting introductory talk on this topic, and maybe we can explore this a little bit more. I'd love to have you back on. Atiya, thank you so much for your time.
100%. It was a pleasure anytime.